Hi, I'm Andrew Mower, an AFM expert tutor. Now, I get a lot of students ask me, how do I get these 20 professional skills marks in AFM? So I've done a video to explain how they work, including insights from the AFM examining team. I recently attended a conference where they gave us a few indicators of which areas students are struggling with and a few tips as to how to get these marks. There are 20 marks going in this exam. That is massive. You need to be able to get these and understand how to earn these marks in order to be successful in AFM. So enjoy this video. Right, there are 4 types of professional skills marks we get in AFM. The first is communication. We then get analysis and evaluation, professional skepticism, and commercial acumen. I'm going to run through these one by one and give you tips on each of these. Now, all of these will be in your exam. Communication can only be in question 1, and in question 1, you will get all 4 of these. And then in questions 2 and 3, you won't get communication, but you'll get the other ones instead. The first one is communication. Now, this will only appear in section A questions in AFM. So that's just your big 50-mark question, which will be question 1. So you'll only get these communication marks in that question. And what they're looking for is style, language, and clarity, and ultimately the ease of reading your answer. So have you communicated clearly? Are they able to read your answer quickly and easily? Also, they're looking out for the correct use of the answer spaces. Remember, if you're doing calculations, you need to do them in the spreadsheet. If you're doing discussion parts, so wordy bits, you need to do them in the word processor. And of course, if you're doing a Black-Scholes calculation, you need to use the BSOP calculator. So making sure we're using the correct spaces. They're also looking for a report format. Now, to do that, we need a to from subject at the top. We need a quick introduction. I was at a conference recently with the AFM examining team. They said that introduction can literally be 2 or 3 lines. It can be just 1 paragraph, a really quick overview of what the report is about. You're then going to do an appendix and label it as an appendix for your calculations in the spreadsheet. You have your report findings. So they are the discursive parts of the question. That'll be in the word processor. And then you've got your conclusion, which will also be in the word processor. So everything in there is in the word processor, apart from the appendix where you're doing your calculations. Now, just a quick note on that. Do still label them as part A, part B, part C, part D within those bits of the exam. So within the word processor or within the spreadsheet, make sure you do clearly label which requirement you're doing, because it makes it a lot easier to mark if you do that. So they're the communication marks. Remember to space out your answers. You want short, concise paragraphs. 3 or 4 lines per paragraph is absolutely fine. Leave gaps in between. Make it really easy and appealing to read when you're doing your answers. Great. Now we get on to analysis and evaluation. So our next skill. Now this can be in section A or section B. It will be in both. They're looking for well-structured numbers. So clearly label your workings. If you're doing an MPV and you're doing something like your tax allowable depreciation, just make sure you put in there working 1, working 2, make it really easy for the markers to mark. They're looking for you to use the correct data when you're calculating bits within this exam. So using the data from the scenario properly. And then discussing the numbers. Don't just do your calculations and leave them. It's always good to write down, this is what we're doing, this is what these numbers mean. Just getting down a few words. Even if it feels like a more calculative part, it's always good to get some discussion in there as well. And they're looking for these conclusions and recommendations. If in doubt, do a recommendation and be decisive. Yes, we should do this project because XYZ. Or we should choose this hedging method because XYZ. So go with those and justify why you've chosen it. So they're looking for those as well. Now, at the ACCA conference that I attended recently with the AFM examining team, they said that the 2 areas that students struggle most with are professional skepticism, which I'm going to talk you through now, and then commercial acumen. So these last 2 are the ones that students tend to perform the worst at. So we'll spend a little bit more time on these last 2. Now, professional skepticism and commercial acumen, again, can be anywhere in the exam. They will be in both section A and section B. So professional skepticism is all about questioning the information you've been provided with. As part of that, we need to discuss the key assumptions you make. Now, it isn't just a case of stating the assumption. This assumes that the inflation rates remain constant. It's about challenging them as well. Again, I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. It's always good to request further analysis and information. So before deciding, we should do some sensitivity, or it'd be good to get a breakdown of these costs or to understand the previous year's figures in more detail. So ask for more stuff. And you can use little phrases which just show that you are being skeptical. You're not just accepting what they've given you. You can say things like, on the assumption that the information provided is correct, we should. So we're not just saying, yeah, go and invest this $25 million investment. Just go and spend that money. We are just being a little bit cautious and a little bit skeptical. Now, the examiner actually gave an example of how they want you to be skeptical. So just going to run you through a little story that's based on a brief story that the examiner told. I've elaborated it slightly. But let's imagine that a friend sends you a message. So you get a message from a friend. You can have a little read of that. But hey, hope you're doing well. I've set up a new social media app and I'm looking for $5,000 investment each from a few of my trusted mates. I thought you'd be keen. So that's the message that you receive. Then you get another message. It's going to blow the market away. In the first year, it's going to make 100k of revenue. Then it's going to double each year for the next 5 years. And it gets better. Costs are only 8k each year too, so it makes a huge profit margin. I'm then planning to sell it to Meta after 5 years for $20 million. We're going to be millionaires. So that's the messages that you receive. And what I've asked you to do is be skeptical of your friend's plan. So let's imagine that you got this coming through and you're going, hang on a minute. I am not giving you a single cent of my money until I understand exactly what's going on here. So what I want you to do is just have a little read of that and just think, right, what do we need to be skeptical about? So a new social media app. Okay, right. We need to understand what that's about. Where is it going to fit within the market? Is it going to be actually plausible? 5k investment seems like quite a lot for a project that we don't really understand. A few of my trusted mates, how many of them are we looking at? And why are we suddenly a trusted mate? It's going to blow the market away. How does our friend know this? What sort of research has happened there? Any market research? And then we start challenging the numbers. In the first year, it's going to make 100k. Now that seems pretty ambitious, doesn't it? That feels pretty high. And then it's going to double each year for the next 5 years. Right? Where's that assumption come from? How have you worked out that figure? How do we know that's going to happen? Costs are only 8k each year too, right? So we're doubling our income, our revenue, but then we're not increasing our costs. Seems a bit strange. Need to challenge that. And then we're going to sell it to Meta after 5 years for $20 million. Have we agreed that? Do Meta know about this? Have we spoken to Mark Zuckerberg? Does he know that this 20 million sale is coming up, or is this a massive assumption? So as you can see there are loads of parts of that where I'm thinking, hang on, this doesn't seem plausible. Now, this is the sort of level of skepticism we need to show in the AFM exam. So they're giving you all these numbers and students tend to be quite trusting and go, that's fine. They've said that their sales are going to double each year for the next 5 years. No problem. I'll go with that and I'll put it into my MPV. You've got to challenge it. You've got to say, whoa, that's really ambitious. We need to get some really good evidence that that is likely to happen. Market research, history from similar companies. Where has that come from? So that's the sort of thing we need to be doing in the exam, looking out for these things. Now, I love this, and these assumptions and challenging these, they're really nice because you can question nearly everything, especially the numbers. So any numbers they give you and forecasts, you can challenge them. Another little tip, you can nearly always challenge the cost of capital they're using, so the discount rate. If it's an MPV or a cash flow valuation, that's a really good thing to challenge because, again, it's often assumed to be a figure, but it could have a massive difference on the outcome. Now, I said to state some assumptions, which is very true. So we need to get some assumptions down in this exam. So we might say something like, this assumes the exchange rate is constant for the next 4 years. Now, that is where a lot of students then leave it. They write that, and then they move on to the next assumption. That is not enough. That isn't going to be enough to get you the mark that you are after. What we need to do is we need to challenge it. Now, you might be wondering why we've got some rock climbers on the right there. They're doing a challenge. I want you to associate the word assumptions with challenge. So they're doing something challenging, and so should you. You should be challenging your assumptions in this exam. So what we could then say is something along the lines of, given the political instability in Zealand, this is likely to change. This would impact the MPV and therefore the decision made. So we're then linking it back to the scenario, and they may have told us about some political instability in this country, Zealand. There'll be things in the scenario you can link it to, and then we need to challenge it. What we're saying there is, why is this assumption potentially not valid? That's the key thing. I'll give you another example. Here's another challenge, walking up those stairs, by the way. So state the assumption. This assumes that the cost of capital remains constant at 10% for the full 4 years. Again, often a really good assumption to pick up on. Again, why is that not valid? However, given that this is a new project for XPLC, it's likely their risk is changing. This would affect their cost of capital. This would then change the MPV. So we're talking about why it's not valid and the potential impact that that might have. So we're just going that extra bit further. So that's the really important thing with assumptions. We're challenging them. We're not just stating them, we also challenge them. So remember, assumptions you need to challenge. Brilliant. Right, on to our final skill then, which is commercial acumen. Again, this is one that a lot of students find tricky, and potentially of the four, I'd say is the hardest to achieve the marks. But here are some tips to help you get those, and you will be fine. The first thing you've got to do in AFM is use information from the scenario. So we've got to pick out bits from the question, from the requirements potentially even, but mainly going to be in those exhibits. So look at the company. What do they do? What products do they make? Keep referring to the company by name and their products by name. And then make points that are relevant to the industry the company are in. I'm going to give you a few examples of things you can do there, but try and make points that link to the industry. A lot of students look at the industry they're in and go, oh, great, they're in construction, and then don't reference that at all. We need to make points that are relevant to that business. If you've got some wider real-world knowledge, you can bring it in. You might want to use a little example of a company that recently struggled, or you might want to talk about the political situation at the moment, or whatever. Very briefly, you can just drop that into your answer and just keep going. Again, it's a real luxury that. If you can, amazing. Don't worry if you can't, but don't spend too long on it. Another thing they're looking for with commercial acumen is the big picture view. What impact is this project or this decision going to have on the wider stakeholders? By which I mean shareholders, staff, employees, directors, the wider community, your suppliers potentially, all these people. What impact might it have on them? And also, what is the ESG impact? So what's the impact going to be on their ethics, sustainability, and governance? So always good to think about that. Is it ethical? Is it sustainable? Is it going to be suitable from a governance perspective? So think about those points as well. Let's do an example then. Imagine in your exam you get the travel industry come up. So you get a question come up and it's all about the travel industry. Now I said make points relevant to the industry. What you can do, and you don't have to do it in full, but almost think about a quick pestle. So I'm sure you've heard of pestle analysis before, but that can really help you generate some ideas. So for the travel industry, for example, we might want to think about some political factors. So you could say about, oh, travel may be affected by these international relationships. The economy is going to be huge for the travel industry, isn't it? Holidays are a real luxury. So if the economy is quite poor, maybe less travel expected. Social factors you could bring in. So certain holiday locations become popular. If someone's been there on TikTok and done a little video of them on this beach, suddenly you get an influx of people visiting, or if it's been on TV shows. So that can be a big thing. Technology. So how do people book their holidays? Is there an app that's really quick and easy for them to use? The environment. The environment is nearly always something you can talk about in this exam. So they are becoming more and more conscious of carbon footprint. So something that we need to try and reduce where possible. And then also legal. So potential legal protection if flights are cancelled, for example. So loads of things you can talk about. Now, I'm not saying you need to mention all 6 of these in your exam to get the commercial acumen marks, but at least 1 or 2 of those you can drop into your answer. I just want to show you there is a wide range of points you can make here. This doesn't take long at the start. Look at the industry, have a quick think, right, what points could I make relevant to this industry? And again, if you want to use Pestle to come up with ideas, amazing. Now, I've done one more example, which was for construction. This is one I mentioned earlier, so I thought I'd do this as well for you to show you the sorts of points you can make. Political factors, so you could talk about availability of government funds for building projects. The economy, again, very, very relevant in this one. If there's a poor economy, construction tends to ease up. Social, so the designs, fashion, trends of work are going to change over time. Technology, so people expecting CAD drawings, so computer assisted design type stuff, visualization of projects, so that is a big thing as well. The environment, again, sustainable building methods and materials, can be very important. Again, legal is massive in construction, so building and planning laws, regulations, health and safety standards you could mention. So loads of points that you can make and discussion points you can make that are specific to that industry. So that's how we're going to get these commercial acumen marks, is by linking it to the industry they're in. And there we go. We've been through all of the professional skills marks you need. So communication, remember that's how easy is it to read your answers and making sure you do them in the correct answer spaces. Analysis and evaluation, using the numbers from the scenarios correctly, doing the right calculations, and then discussing and concluding on the numbers you've done. Professional skepticism, so questioning the information and data, stating the key assumptions you made and challenging them, don't forget. And then commercial acumen, so making points that are relevant to the company in mind, the industry they're in, and making suggestions that are feasible given the situation that that company's in. So make sure you practice this. Think about it when you're doing the questions. They're really, really important. 20 marks in AFM. Thanks for watching.